Okay, the webinar is now live, but like we discussed, there aren't any attendees yet. So I will wait till I see someone appear there. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ATD Austin Webinars. I will be your moderator today. I'm Scott Vassell, Director of Webinars with ATD Austin. Today with us we have Kyle. I'm gonna mispronounce your name, Kyle. Kyle Scott. Is it Lamontagne?
I've heard worse, Scott. Don't worry. Lamontagne.
Lamontagne. Okay. Well, we got a lot of French Canadians here, so.
Well, you know what? You pegged that one. You pegged that one on the dot. I'll give you that. French Canadian is the origin.
All right. Well, Kyle is a former business technology consultant in the world of Big Four, implementing and managing large-scale ERPs and CRMs. Now he helps Fortune 500 clients implement, grow, and manage their corporate L&D and technology stack. Kyle, welcome to ATD Austin Webinars.
Thanks for having us, Scott.
You bet. You can take over the screen anytime you want.
Perfect. Let's give this one a try. Put this in presentation mode.
There we go. I
Scott,
see that.
look good? Cool. So let's kick right off. So as Scott graciously alluded, very happy to be with everyone today. My name's Kyle Lamontagne, Director of Implementation with Learning Tribes. I've been with the company for almost 3 years now. As Scott mentioned, my previous history was in consulting, big four consulting, ERP, CRM implementations for SAP. So with technology background, but focused today on learners, content curation, learning experience platforms, and that'll sort of be the crux of our conversation today. So I always like to start, more so recently than historically. I wasn't much of a quotes guy, but to be honest with you, with everyone being socially distant in geographically disparate locations from one another, I think it's important to sort of bring everyone back together and harmonize over a common theme that we all have in common, build community, because it's not as easily attainable as it once was. And this is a quote I'll love to share now from Albert Einstein: learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is to never stop questioning. And I think that has never become more true than recently. Things will go good one day, things not so good the next day. 1 hour we're up, the next hour we're down. Don't really know what's coming in our world, but the important thing is that we own and control what we are capable of controlling. And in that, I think learning is a strategic part of all of our toolboxes. It's something that we can effectuate change within each and every one of us, each and every day, by using the resources that are available to us to continuously grow, learn, and develop. And that's really going to be sort of the pillar of our conversation today. When we speak to content curation, how we use content curation to not only empower our own models, but potentially from a corporate sense, empower the models of our associates, in a higher education sense, empower the learning, growth, and development of our students. So this will all resonate as we progress through. And for the purpose of our conversation today, as I sort of mentioned to start, we're going to be strategically focusing on content curation. And what I'll do as part of this presentation, just to give you an overview of flow before we really dive in, is I'm going to provide some high-level thoughts, some opinion, mostly factual-based understanding of what content curation is. I think we've all become fairly familiar with the concept as of late. It's a more progressive topic, something that's more and more referenced and utilized. But we'll just baseline ourselves real quick as to the conversation that will be had, set sort of that base understanding as to what content curation is. Then we'll take a strategic step outside of the PowerPoint, and we'll actually drill into a learning curation tool, which is called EdFlex. It's a proprietary tool of Learning Tribes, but it is our content curation platform. It very much is an augmentation to any formal learnings that you may be doing today. But we'll go into that into a bit more detail once we get out of the theory and more into the practical side. Of course, any questions along the way, please feel free to promote those in the chat. Happy to facilitate conversations directly around those. We will save a little bit of time at the end, about the last 10, 15 minutes or so, to help procure any additional questions. We can dive into specific features. Any opinion based, I'm always happy to author sort of what I'm seeing out in the industry and take it from there. So real quick, as I said, content curation, it's going to be what we're focusing on today. That's the tool that we're going to look at is strategically focused on facilitating this process. At a high level, what is content curation? And it's really based on three main pillars: finding, filtering, and sharing information. So the way that I specifically look at content curation is not in a silo, but it's really taking a look at the larger landscape of all of the learnings that you're doing today. So for a lot of individuals, both in your own life, as well as let's focus on maybe in a corporate environment, there's always been structured, facilitated learning. I like to call that your formal learning. A lot of times these are your compliance-based courses. These are your mandated coaching opportunities that get pushed down to you from the top down of an organization. Things that have true learning objectives, knowledge checks that you must pass, certifications that you must earn, things that are proactively tracked via KPIs or analytics. Those are truly structured, formal educational experiences. But what's interesting about those is that companies have become more abreast, so to speak, of the reality that their people, they want them to continuously grow, learn, and develop, as I mentioned. And a lot of times you'll ask a company, of course, this is a philosophy. This is something they want their people to do. They want them to attain this higher level of educational understanding, but unrelated to the formal learning that a lot of times is procured through a learning experience platform or an LMS system, they don't necessarily have a repository or a functional technology that allows continuous growth and the ability to learn and develop, potentially relating to your formal job or outside of your own job. And that's where content curation has become so key, in that companies were struggling with employees trying to access resources in environments that really were not meant for the corporate world, right? So if you think about, I'll give a perfect example, Facebook. Facebook, historically widely used in a personal sense, was tried to use in a more corporate, formal sense. Facebook as a company realized the structure of it didn't truly meet that need. And what came as a result of that was Workplace by Facebook. A designated environment, a designated tool application that keeps the precipice or the main elements of what Facebook was, but really structured it for a corporate environment. I think another great example of that is YouTube. I'm guilty of going to YouTube a ton in my own personal development. Anytime I can't figure out an Excel formula, the first thing that I do is I go to Excel. But there's a lot of fluff, so to speak, within YouTube that is not necessarily appropriate for the corporate environment. It's really important to note, because when we look at the strategic value of what potentially a curation process may bring, streamlining the user experience, really removing the white noise or the distractions that exist on a internet site or a non-corporate environment, it makes it difficult for a learner. But through a curation process of understanding what the needs of an organization are, what the needs of a learner are, what skills, behaviors are we trying to effectuate a change in, we can actually build a much more structured, corporate, environmentally friendly repository or application for employees to use. And as I said, I'm speaking in sense of a corporate environment today, but the concept is applicable even in your own personal development or in a higher education sense as well. So that's really where the value of curation comes to play, and that yes, these resources exist 9 times out of 10 publicly today. Through your own research, through your own procurement, you would be able to find these same potential opportunities or resources, articles, videos, but it's that opportunity cost that we're strategically focused on. So from put on a business hat perspective, taking a look at the concept of an opportunity cost, right? It's foregoing one activity for another, and whether it be monetary, whether it be strategic cost, right? All of these areas are essentially opportunities that you could have spent elsewhere, but in sense you were spending that time looking for resources. And that's an area where if we can bring efficiency to that process, that's not only a win for the learner, that is a win for the corporation, that is a win for your own personal development as well. Now, to that regard, right, there's got to be some method to the madness, right? So we spoke about almost like a SWOT analysis of the landscape of internet articles, internet videos, internet podcasts, Coursera courses, right? We went through sort of the pros and cons of, yes, it's phenomenal information, fantastic to have available, but is it truly purposeful for the corporate sense? Is it truly purposeful for facilitating personal development? And a lot of times, as we just discussed, the answer to that is no, in that the content itself is not directly either related to what you're trying to accomplish, or it's too difficult to make it actually an effective process. So as an organization, Learning Tribes, and with our tool EdFlex, what do we do to help facilitate this curation process, right? What's the secret sauce or the method to the madness? And although there are a couple of key technologies that help us facilitate this process, we generally focus on these main points that you see listed here. And I'm going to read through them. The first one is find. Second one is filter. Third one is grade. Synthesize, contribute, and then guide. These are our guiding principles for any curation that we do. Now, in essence, you have to remember that the curation being done is a scan of everything that's available today. That's where we're finding it, through a combination of artificial intelligence, which to me is still a bit of a buzzword. I do think it has purposeful meaning. There is technology behind it, but it's important to understand what in essence is happening in the background, right? So through the use of our technology, we're essentially going out and we're analyzing across a multitude of resources, videos, podcasts, scholarly articles, and making sure based on a preset white list of providers, of websites, of curators that we know have been fully validated, the content is as it needs to be, we will go out and we will search all of that content. We will find it, thousands and thousands of resources, and we will pull it all back in hand. That initial first step is done really through a technology lens, through combination, as I said, of AI, website crawlers, so on and so forth. Goes out and provides that initial catalog of resources. But that is essentially only the most beginning component, because that could be replicated from a human, correct? Like those are the opportunities that you are taking today as a learner. You are going out to the internet to find these resources. Again, though, that's an opportunity cost. So what we do is our technology, or technology in general, facilitates that searching process, brings in those resources. Now, this is where we get to filtering. Resources are only as good as sort of the list that they exist on. There's only certain resources that really meet the true needs of the specific skills that a company is looking to effectuate a change in, potentially behaviors or topics that you're trying to learn as an individual. So that's that second wave, right? So if you imagine a funnel, we're now started at a macro process, and we continue to drill and become more and more micro as we go down this funnel of first curating, then filtering, making sure that it is specific to the content, topics, skills, behaviors that we've deemed appropriate. Once we analyze and make sure that, yes, all the content, at least at a high level, seems to be appropriate for what we're looking for, we then purposely grade the content. So through a two-lens opportunity, both from a professional curator review, an industry expert as me provides that first level understanding of sort of a seal of approval. That industry expert, Mark, said, yes, based on my expertise as a professional in the industry, this resource hits the mark, gets my seal of approval. We then also, not only from a pure expert perspective is that initial review important, but it also is important that you get user feedback as well. You get additional expert feedback. So we take two folds of approach there in terms of reviewing to make sure things are appropriate. One, industry experts, me, which of course, based on sort of their own understanding or their own sort of silo of an industry, they may have a certain opinion or a certain expertise. It's always important, though, that we get that secondary feedback from an end user or necessarily from a corporation. So let's continue on sort of that thought process of a corporation. We, in essence, will provide this initial recommendation based on our experts' review. But we know that each entity, each corporation may have their own variation or flavor of that specific topic. For instance, let's say it's a financial institution, something that's highly regulated. Although a lot of those topics are industry standards, there may be a certain verbiage, philosophy, or customer experience approach that a certain company, corporation, entity has that is a slight flavor variation of what the main curated content says. That's important feedback. And that feedback is fully vetted with the organization, with the users, to ensure that our curation process, or the curation process in general, is fully in line with the anticipated messaging, leadership objectives of the corporation or end user that we are working to provide this content to. Now, as I won't focus as much on the remaining options, the remaining steps, because they kind of group together on a second pass perspective, but to synthesize, contribute, and guide, that's really the growth process. And we'll speak to this much more tangibly once we're into the solution. I think this is one of the largest areas of opportunity for an organization. And something that we've really seen come to fruition lately is that an organization, a business entity, has a perception of or perceived reality of potentially the types of content, the information of the content that their people are looking for. And potentially, lo and behold, through a month, 2 months, 3 months of actually using the resources, using the tools, the information that comes to light may actually differ slightly from what the organization thought going in. But that's a very important step, in that curation is not a set it and forget it model. Curation is continuously groomed, continuously grown, and continuously takes inputs not only from the user group, from executives, but from the overall world as well, right? I would say 6 months ago, we were not curating nearly as many topics on work at home, but because of the shift, the global shift, because of the increased attention from employees on this topic and the data and analytics that have come from the platforms and the tools use, we've adjusted the model for certain partners so that we were facilitating more on-demand content based on the current need. So that's just an important concept to keep in mind as we go through sort of this philosophy that although we have a structure, a funnelized structure, in my mind, it is never a set it and forget it, constantly being groomed, constantly being worked on. And I would say if that's something that is not in practice, then that's how you end up with outdated content. And to me, that's the beauty of curation, is that it allows you to continuously grow and continue to build your expertise based on the latest and greatest content that's available, not needing to continuously refresh content that may be have been built in-house, so to speak. Now, this just speaks a little bit more visually to that process that I walked through, and this is specifically for Learning Tribes as a company, EdFlex as our platform, our curation platform. This is strategically our model of how we go about facilitating curation. Specifically focused on, as I mentioned, a combination of both the technology and the human components. Although I think, and my background is heavily focused in technology, I think technology needs to be a core pillar of all work that's done. But I still think it's an area that is ripe for improvement, that it is not eventually where it may be 5, 10, 15 years from now. And because of that, we offer that 2-3 step layer of authorization of content. First, aggregating through AI and crawlers, then allowing our professional content editors, our team of learning curators, to be a part of that grooming process, as well as also bringing in the inputs from our actual learners. And what this allows us to build is essentially a robust catalog. I think off the shelf today, our standard catalog is about 40,000 resources or so, but it allows us to build this robust catalog. And I feel confident in offering the articles, the podcasts, the videos that are a part of it, because they've not only been vetted and procured through the internet, they've been validated through a tagging segmentation system with technology. We've had an expert curator review offer essentially their seal of approval. And we also working directly with our partnerships with corporations that may have the tool to make sure it's tailored specifically to their people, their executive flavor of the month, the initiatives that are a priority to their business. So it's absolutely a robust system. And as you saw in the beginning, these are wheels. And that's the important concept. These are wheels that continuously keep turning. They constantly feed into one another. And at no point, and that's the beauty of a circle, right? At no point does that circle run out. It's continuously refined, continuously groomed, and these wheels keep moving, and they continue to provide month over month refreshed and renewed content based on this philosophical approach of content curation. So real quick, last slide, and then I'm going to jump into the demo. Show you guys sort of the technology behind the philosophy, how we've enabled this process, what it looks like from an end user perspective. But three quick things before we jump in that I just wanted to highlight. What are, a lot of great thoughts that have been spoken here, sort of on the philosophical side. Potentially, what does this mean from an ROI perspective, KPI for an organization, even a tangible benefit for the end user? And I think it's very clear, as we mentioned, that it's easily and seamlessly accessible. It can be easily integrated with technology that you already have in play today, or as I'll show you in a moment, it can exist in a siloed environment as much or as little as need be. It provides actionable guidance, and that's one of those items where we'll really look at the tangible benefits of analytics and reporting about how those can help drive business insights, business growth, even strategic leadership development. And then also, as I mentioned, from the end user, we'll take a look at this concept of called a lifelong learning score. This is something that I love because really our tool, as I mentioned, is an aggregation of different learning experiences. It is listening to podcasts, viewing your TED Talk videos, taking a Coursera course. So in essence, a lot of entities consider those individualized learning opportunities, but I like to, as an organization, we like to provide that holistic view. And that's where we've kind of coined this term of a lifelong learning score, something that may persist with you while you're within the organization and even your time after. So I think enough on the philosophy side. What I'm going to do real quick is just stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to just quickly open a Chrome browser window, and we'll take a live sort of test drive through the solution here. Let's just share Chrome. Okay, so this is where, and I apologize maybe for getting a little overexcited. This is where I start to geek out a little bit. I love the tool. I love the solution that we have in place. As I said, my background is in technology, so this has really become a passion project, so to speak, for myself. Quick framework for everybody. What we're looking at here is specifically the EdFlex instance of a very specific client. So this client is actually my parent company, Sitel Group. They are a global BPO provider, customer experience provider for, I would say, you name the Fortune 500, and most likely they serve them. But as a organization, they empower roughly 90,000 global employees across 26 different countries. Last I saw, I think more than 30 plus languages being supported. And this is the solution that has been built and is tailored specifically for them as an organization. So a couple of things from just a stand-up configuration perspective that are really important to keep in mind before we drill into the nuances. From a look and feel perspective, 100% customizable to your organization, to your business entity. From, of course, logo, background, the content itself that's being shown, all of that is done according to the specific business entity, whether it's the department or an entire organization, all of that is customized. So for this particular client, as I said, Sitel Group, they've called their EdFlex, their curation platform, the Empowerment Center, which is what's being branded here. And what you'll notice, I'll just walk through a couple of the widgets that you're seeing. So right now, I'm on my main dashboard. And this is super cool because every month, the organization promotes a brand new set of featured catalogs. And what they've done is they've actually created over the summer a catalog of summer featured courses. And that way, all of these are readily available to people within the organization. And these are content that is sort of the latest and greatest, so to speak, that's refreshed each and every month. And this is, from a learner perspective, you always have the ability on the course card itself to see what type of resource it is: podcasts, articles, videos, courses, as well as the anticipated duration and language that it's being offered. If it is an official course, and we'll drill into some of those in a minute, taking a look at LinkedIn courses, Coursera courses, and other partnerships with higher university entities that we partner with. But there's some great metadata here. One of the items that I've seen most widely used recently has been the anticipated duration. So of course, something we know that we love about videos is that you do get that duration, but we also provide that estimate with articles, with courses, and of course with podcasts as well. So this really helps you as a learner to say, okay, I know that I've got 15 free minutes coming up in my day. I can plan to watch this video or read this article, and you know exactly beforehand what you're going to be getting into, and potentially how you can use that in your day. We've also continued to build in more recently some social collaboration. So you do have the opportunity to add any resource to your collection, sort of like a virtual locker of bookmarks, so to speak, as well as share the content. So if you wanted to go ahead and share the content on your social network or just send to a colleague via email, you have that opportunity built directly here within the platform. Now, as I scroll up, I'm sure you noticed in the beginning, there's a couple of set tags, so to speak, that are available here at the top. This is the specific catalog that this company, Sitel, has structured. So the catalog, of course, as I said, we have a standard catalog, so to speak, but there is the option of providing a customized catalog based on the specific behavior skills that a company or organization deems most appropriate. And that's really important because this is where we begin to curate and drill down on that funnel to content that is so specific to what the organization is focused on. And this is where, as a business, this particular client has focused on these main topics. Big addition as of late, as I mentioned, was the Talent at Home edition. And all of these are structured into category subcategories. So what I'm going to show you, I could click directly here on each of them and it would expand it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into catalog here. And that way you can see the full breadth of everything. So what you've noticed now, I've gone into the catalog. And what you're seeing at the top here are those same bookmark tag widgets that you saw on the previous screen, all listed across here at the top. Now, of course, all the content being shown right now is unfiltered. I'm showing every resource that exists within this client's catalog, not filtered by any particular type of modality and not filtered by any particular type of language. But what I can do as a learner is I can come in and say, I'm really looking for language and culture skills. And within that, I'm really focused on developing my Spanish acumen. I would say we're located in South Florida in the Miami area. I'm a native, and I'm definitely guilty of struggling with Spanish. So this would be a perfect area of opportunity for myself. Based on the funnel that I've just created for myself, I've been able to now drill down specifically to those resources that are based on not only a category of language and culture, but specifically Spanish. What I'll do is let me just give a more, wider breadth example. Let's take Talent at Home, something that of course has been a very hot topic as of late. And I'll say, okay, Talent at Home, let's take a look at working at home and see what resources are available to me to help with, maybe I'm a new employee, just started with a company, and I'm used to being in brick and mortar or being physically present, and I've had my virtual onboarding. I'm going to be a virtual employee, at least for the foreseeable future. I want to make myself better as a virtual employee. What can I do to help myself? And that's where now, based on this funnel that was set with the organization of category Talent at Home, a subcategory skill behavior, so to speak, of working, I'm able to now see content that is specific to that category, subcategory. And as I mentioned, right now I'm viewing unfiltered, but I can say, I'm a podcast guy. I only want to take a look at, podcasts, and I can do that. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly do that to show you. And I can see that I have one podcast article available to me in this structure. And what I'll do is I'll click on it. I think this is a great sort of example to show you. And one of the great things is that you are presented with this resource overview page for all of your resources. And as I said, this is, in my opinion, one of the best value or time savers is that you do get all of your metadata up front. You're able to play the podcast here directly within our site. You do not have to necessarily navigate directly to that podcast. All can be rendered right here. You get your about the content. We do rate all of our contents based on a level. So this one has been rated as introductory. And for this introductory resource, upon completion, you would earn 2 points, which would then, as previously mentioned, alluded to on the slides, helps you build your lifelong learning score as you progress through your learnings of different modalities, so on and so forth. As well, with each resource, we're able to see a full rating as well. So I'm able to see not only the expert curator's review, but I'm also able to see, as potentially my other associates have also, how they've rated it. I have the opportunity here, of course, to put my own review, and I can publish that. So this is really great information, right? It helps not only to build awareness for the learner prior to taking a resource, focusing on that concept of an opportunity cost, as we mentioned, but it allows you to build that sense of community as well, in that now you are collaborating with your peers. You're sharing and disseminating information and content that is maybe empowering your team or colleagues to grow. And that's really palpable and powerful. Additionally, just one other area that I wanted to focus on, and what I'll do is I'll click back real quick and just expand back out my search. So let's click into another area here. And I'll say, let's take a look at courses. And I love this. So this is where, as I said, we aggregate content from across the web. So we pull in articles, we pull in podcasts, we pull in videos, but we also have strategic partnerships with higher education entities, as well as Coursera, as well as LinkedIn. And we know a lot of, for instance, myself, I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn Learning, and something I use in my own personal development, but I've been able to aggregate sort of my learning experiences within one platform. So although I may be interested in a LinkedIn Learning course, click on it here just to show you, I can of course see the same metadata. So I have full access to the points that I would earn. I can see as well if there's already been any ratings. Additionally, something very cool from the course perspective, as well as articles and podcasts, is you do have this opportunity to see that you may be interested in field. And this is, if you think sort of like a Amazon model, right? You've added soap to your cart. You may also be interested in shampoo. And that's sort of where in the back end, the algorithm is working to ensure that based on contents that you've looked at, not only at the topical content type, the resource type, but we're able to then promote additional contents that may also be relevant to you, that may help you continue your learning experience. So I'll just click on one here just to show you. And again, similar to before, you're presented with a full overview of the course. I can see here that this is a course that's offered in connection with Coursera. I can also see fully about the content, as well as a week-over-week syllabus as well, who the instructor is, and then a little bit about sort of the designer as well. And all of this information is fully available here to an end learner, that they can see this well before beginning, and they can make strategic decisions based on that. But at the least, everything is aggregated within one learning portal. As you complete a resource, as I said, you're able to say, I want to mark it as complete, or add to your collection, your virtual bookmark locker, so to speak. Upon clicking Mark Complete, you will see that I am granted those 80 points for completion. And I will show you sort of on the analytical back end how those sort of are at play in a moment. So let me just click back into the overall catalog. I'll just show you one more example from a video perspective, because I think it's great to see. As I mentioned, this one, for instance, that we're looking at is a video that was brought in via the partnership of YouTube and TED Talks. And again, everything is fully rendered within your solution. So if I were to click play here, it would not launch in a new window. The video would render fully here and provide that sort of streamlined learning experience. Now, as I mentioned, and just to summarize, this catalog is fully customizable to each and every client, each and every entity. We do offer what we call a standard EdFlex catalog that consists of certain keywords or behaviors that we then procure content on each month, or working directly sort of through the workshopping, blueprinting workshop. We're able to set up specific catalogs to the business objectives, learner objectives at hand, and really help augment any formal training that's already taking place. One more area I want to show you from a front end, maybe two more areas that I want to show you from a front end learner perspective are learning paths. And then I'll show you this little icon guy down here at the bottom in a moment. So let's click into learning paths. And this is, of course, in my opinion, a really hot topic, right? Being able to provide very structured learning experiences, skill development opportunities to personnel. Whereas when we just looked at in the catalog, of course, all contents were structured. They were broken into a category, subcategory, but the contents themselves aren't necessarily linked. I almost call it like in technical speak, a daisy chain, right? They aren't necessarily linked from one to another. Although you may be provided additional resources based on sort of the background engine, there's no true, after you complete X, Y, and Z, you are now proficient or more adept in a certain skill or behavior. So of course, the concept of a learning path has allowed that to come to fruition in that we've built strategic learning paths based on a couple of set initiatives. And one of the ones that I'll focus on again is a newer one that we've recently built for our market, working remotely. And it's important to keep in mind that all the learning paths are structured really similar. So when you click into a learning path, you'll actually get to see here the full duration. And you'll notice that actually it's divided into sequences. So as you go through, each sequence is made up of a few different resource types. Those can be videos, articles, podcasts, as well as the potential for a small quiz or knowledge check at the end. And then similar to the overall concept of a learning path progression, after you've completed each sequence and completed all the necessary requirements, you do have the opportunity of earning a certification or badge, so to speak, to say that you've now fully garnished the skills for organizing yourself in a remote environment. Now, as I scroll down here, you'll start to see this progress bar come to fruition. So what you're noticing here is that you'll always see one high-level card, and this card is the primary skill that all of really the modalities or entities associated are focused on. So you can see here, skill 1, organizing oneself to work from home, that there are 3 resources associated. 1 article, 2 article, a video, and then a quiz. You can always click at any time to open up that specific resource. Again, you'll always be presented with the overall metadata that is associated with the resource as it's been published. And you can see all of that directly right here. Now, again, at the end, it's currently locked because I have not completed my prerequisites to do so, but we have enabled a quiz here for this learning path. And similar to as I scroll down, you now see that progression continue to be built out. Now focusing on skill number 2, the associated modalities of video, articles, another quiz. Skill 3, likewise a similar structure, so on and so forth. And the concept then is, after you've completed and mastered all 4 skills, you become now a master of this topic. You become a master of the topic of working remotely, organizing yourself. And because of that, that skill or knowledge will now be reflected that you are proficient within that topic in your learner profile, which is actually a perfect segue. So now as a learner, what I'm going to show you real quick is my activity dashboard. So let's say now, just to bring us back for a second, everything that we've seen, right? So far we've seen from an end user perspective that I've been able to come into the platform. I've been able to see not only the full resources that the company has been provided to me in my new content dashboard. I've been able to go into a catalog, view all of the resources that are available. I've also been able to see my learning paths. Now, from an end user perspective, I always have the opportunity to see my lifelong learning score here, which is a full aggregate of all of your learnings to date, the types of modalities that you've progressed through, as well as what I just mentioned, skills that you've acquired. So as you progress through those learning paths, you would be able to acquire and earn these skill badges to show that you are proficient, knowledgeable, and adept in those specific developmental areas. Now, everything that I've showed to you so far is from a end user, end learner perspective. What I do want to just focus on for the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes is the analytical engine, sort of the back end. So as now we're kind of getting into the behind the scenes. So as an end user, an end learner, the normal day-to-day would not have access to this additional widget in your dropdown. It's purely based on my permissions right now as a super admin. But what we're looking at is specifically the analytics for this particular client. And we focus on a couple of different areas: key figures on a learner perspective, categories, resources, and then of course your ability to produce ad hoc reports that you could quickly ingest into a reporting structure that you have in place today. For instance, I have a client that rightfully so loves SAP Lumira as their dashboard, and they're able to quickly aggregate this data via an automated export from our system into theirs on a monthly batch cycle. But I just want to focus, that's a little more advanced. I just want to focus on the key metrics that we're looking at that are provided out of box. We can always see the total number of learners for the platform, as well as the uptick, hopefully, in a month-over-month basis. Total duration of learning that's been spent to date. Popular categories. So as we can see for this client, their popular categories have included working at home, generation, as well as customer experience. Can also see on a rolling basis what the number of viewed resources look like over time. So as we can see, sort of, and it rightfully expected so, right? If we look at what's happened in the world here around the March, February timeframe, and then that large uptick as everyone sort of went into a permanently remote environment, that's what's actually visually represented here. So it's super cool to see. As well as the breakdown of resource types. So this is what I like to call, from a key figure perspective, these are your high level KPIs. This is your metadata. This is a very macro perspective. Now, what I'll do though is I'll drill down bit by bit. So as I click on learners, I'm now coming into a leaderboard functionality. So I can see throughout all of the learners on my platform, all right here, 25,000 or so, the total number of lifelong learning points that they've established, the last resource that they viewed, as well as their position relative to everybody else in the company. I've seen huge use cases around this recently, especially continuing to try to build not only a sense of gamification, but a sense of community and gamification while none of us are together. And there's been high use of this to build competitions, not only individualized competitions, but departmental competitions that have resulted in prizes, day off, so on and so forth. But I've really seen this leaderboard functionality used in cool ways recently, and that's been very exciting to see. Now we get into popular categories and popular resources. To me, this is where, if you were to ask me, what's the number one intrinsic value, or not even intrinsic, monetary value, let's focus on that, that will come from the platform. So outside of not only now as an organization or as a learner, you have the opportunity to continue, learn, grow, develop, more in an informal sense. For an organization, you are getting tangible insights, KPIs, analytics that help drive not only coaching opportunities, but growth for employees. And what does that necessarily mean, right? Let's break that down. I'll give you a very tangible example. I had a pharmaceutical client that went live with the solution with EdFlex about 2.5, 3 months ago. And we went through they had a customized catalog. So we went through the initial curation exercise with them. And because they are pharmaceutical, majority of their users were doctors, very highly educated, degreed employees. And the initial anticipation going in was that they would love podcasts, that would be something that would really resonate with the learners, that that sort of on the go modality would be highly used. They also had the initial anticipation that people would be looking for scholarly articles, continue to progress in their formal education. And what's amazing is that we do sort of monthly report checks. What ended up happening was that after the first month, not only was podcast the most underused resource, they also found that the topic that they thought would be most relevant was also at the very bottom of the list. What the analytics showed was that people were actually listening to mostly videos, high use of videos, and that majority of users were actually looking at personal development. So soft skills development, providing empathy, being able to de-escalate difficult situations. So the business took those insights that came from the analytics of being able to see what the most widely used resources were, what types of resources were being used, and we took that into account. So very much, as I mentioned in the beginning, that curation is not a set it and forget it model. This is a prime example in that we took the learnings that came from the data analytics, refined our engine of the types of modalities that were being used, the content that was being promoted, and made sure that the next month, those contents, those modality types were automatically the ones that sat at the top, because the business identified that soft skills was an area that the people were looking for help in, that they were unaware of. And they also were able to drill down on the types of experiences that their people were enjoying based on what the initial anticipation was. So they've been able to use this data very tangibly to not only continue to refine their solution, but purposely effectuate a change in skills, behaviors, and knowledge gaps based on what was being viewed. It's as simple as being able to almost say, to view somebody's Google search and take that knowledge as an opportunity to help them. And that's become very strategic as of late, and really a use case that I love, because it's very grounded in facts and data, but it's using technology and curation in a very tangible way. Now, to that regard, analytics aside, one more item just wanted to focus on was this little button at the bottom. And I think it fits perfectly into this continuous growth and refining opportunity. So many people may be familiar with this button. We do run on Intercom. There's a facilitation sort of communication tool, but we, with organizational permission, we allow this entity as part of every EdFlex resource. And what this provides is an on-demand curator. So for an end user, when they're searching for content, they can not only come to this repository here of being able to interact in live time with a curator and say, hey, I just finished viewing this video, didn't really think it hit the mark, want to make sure you guys are aware. Or vice versa, hey, I was looking for content or topics around de-escalating difficult situations. I couldn't really find what I was looking for. Would you be able to offer some additional resources? And then based on what's already been pre-filtered, pre-sorted, pre-approved by the organization, the curator, a live human curator, it's not a bot, can promote that in real time to the learner. This individual will also take this feedback offline, and that way in the monthly review cycle with the organization, we can promote these insights as well, of saying, hey, here are some of the questions or topics that we got from learners, and we think it'd be appropriate to bring additional content around those specific topics. So in my mind, this is a great feature to have for not only the end user, but for the organization, and really helps build that humanized connection. As I said, it's not a bot, real person, and we'll provide those on-demand insights as well. Just one more click button, and then happy to open it up to questions. As I mentioned, everything that we just viewed was rendered directly within the platform. We do allow a period filter of downloadable exports, or of course, throughout the lifetime of the platform. So you do have the opportunity, if you are using an additional analytical tool, to aggregate all of that reporting data and analytics as well. But overall, as I said, just to summarize and wrap up sort of what we reviewed, took a strategic look at curation as a philosophy, what's involved overall, potentially why you may use curation versus a traditional method of learning. As I said, within an organization, you will always have your formal learning. This is really, in my mind, a curation is an augmentation of what you are already doing. It's provide those additional resources to empower your people to grow, to learn, develop, both directly related to their job, as well as just items they may be passionate about. But we know overall that there's an overabundance, over-indentation of information, and this really helps pull it all together. So from a user perspective, you always have access to those videos, podcasts, articles in a nice streamlined fashion. But as an organization, you also have the opportunity to view those tangible insights as well. So what I'm going to do, just to quickly pull it all back together here based on that summary, is just share the PowerPoint once more and wrap up with just maybe some food for thought. As I said, I'm very grounded from a business perspective. I like to keep things very tangible. And in the beginning, we focused on this concept of an opportunity cost. And to put some framework around it, what potentially does this mean? And these are some high-level numbers based on industry average, but about 9.3 hours a week is spent searching for information, which is essentially based on an average work week, 23% of your time. And based on what is statistically average, there's a large chunk of potential savings to be had there. Again, this is from the purview of an organization, but the same philosophy can also be applied to your own day-to-day, right? In that searching for information, that opportunity costs takes away from potentially the learnings itself. And I always just like to keep the numbers in mind. We did our demo. So that's really, I'd say, the method to the madness. Happy to sort of pause there. I know it was a lot of information. I hope very useful. This was great for me. I love being able to speak about this, what I've seen. Happy to pause here, Seth and Alex on my team. Open it up for questions as appropriate, or see potentially how I can provide additional guidance.
Well, Kyle, I don't have any questions in the chat just yet. If any of our attendees have questions you've been holding back on, feel free to throw them in the chat or in the Q&A. One question that I had for you is, you had talked about sometimes your content may be a course from LinkedIn Learning, or it might be a course from Coursera, something along those lines. In another platform that shall remain nameless, that isn't curated by an organization, most of the curation happens from the members of that particular platform. Someone may post, I took this great course over here at LinkedIn Learning, and you go to it, and those are premium services. So if your members don't have a membership with LinkedIn Learning or Coursera or wherever that has been curated from, then they can't take that course. Is that the same thing here, or do we, have some sort of a license if we were to use that platform, or how would that work out?
Yeah, great question, Scott. And you're right, because essentially, right, we are pulling, we're pulling content from another party source, right? It's not necessarily something we own. And I've seen a couple of different flavors of this play out based on the organization. So I have seen some organizations establish this concept of a ed coin, an educational coin, where they say we're going to allocate, 50,000 X monetary amount for the year for our employees' growth for formal certification. And that way, then that partnership is established with that business entity, LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, etc. And then because that entity that already exists, that contractual relationship exists, the content then becomes open to the organization. So now those walls are broken down. If it was, let's say, on a more individualized basis, of course, we can help procure through partnerships that we have, but it's not necessarily an open gate to a free resource if it is being a fee certification on their end.
Right. I do have a question from Catherine Jewell. She says, how does your system work with an LMS? And she has a second question. So since we're pressed for time, I'll give you both of them. Are the assets actually housed on your platform, or is everything just linked to its original location on YouTube, LinkedIn Learning, etc.? So 2 questions.
Great question. So the first question, LMS, we've integrated with, I would say, the majority of industry leading LMS, learning experience platforms, as well as our own in-house Tribute. which is our learning experience platform. A couple of different options. So we've done SSO integration, where essentially our solution exists as a side, but through let's say a button or widget provides that seamless experience into our system. So if you wanted to keep EdFlex as it exists, look and feel, direct SSO, no problem. We've also done API and iframe integrations. So if there are only certain courses, certain catalogs, etc., that you want to pull into your LMS, we fully supported that integration as well, and no problems there. So a couple of different options, but absolutely a model that we're familiar with, and based on the LMS or LXP you have, can definitely flush those requirements out. The second question, Scott, on if you could real quick, the second question that you had proposed.
She wants to know if the assets are actually housed on your platform, or is everything linked to its original location?
Of course. So two flavors there. One, for information or content that is third party, in essence, we necessarily do not own that content. So if that be the case, a lot of times it would link to that third party. Now, it's important to keep in mind, though, that because we may not own that content, we're still able to render it directly within our platform. So you mentioned podcasts and YouTube. When I was on that page, if I was to click play on that YouTube, it will play directly within our EdFlex. You will not be redirected to YouTube. Similar with the podcast, if you were to click play on that podcast, it would not redirect you to that original source. You'd be able to render and play it directly within our entity.
Right. Okay. So that's good to know, because there are some organizations who may have firewalls up that prevent their users from going to certain areas like YouTube or Facebook or any other type of location.
You're exactly right, Scott, and that's a use case we've seen come to fruition. Exactly that sort of whitelist firewall dilemma. As I mentioned, our parent companies, BPO, customer service, a lot of agent perspective that do have that segmented firewall, and this has allowed a intermediate solution for that.
Okay, well, those are the questions that we had, Kyle. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, I just want to say thank you again. I hope this was enlightened. I hope this was a good sort of run through of the solution. What I've seen sort of in the industry, as I said, there's no true science to curation. It's definitely an art, but there's some facilitation processes and technologies that help that process. And I hope this was useful. And Scott, just want to say thanks again for having us part of this webinar.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I want to make a couple of announcements about our organization. Alex and Kyle, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here and sharing all this with us, and I hope we can have you back pretty soon.
Thanks, Scott. It was a pleasure being here.
So for those of you still on the webinar, just want to bring up some things that are coming up. I want to make sure that everybody goes out and registers for the upcoming Leader in Learning Conference that we have this fall in November. That's going to be a really good one. It's going to be all virtual this year, and there's a great price set right now. You can go ahead and register at any time. We have 2 virtual networking happy hours coming up this next month. We have one that's kind of local. The September virtual networking happy hour is our local one. And then there's also a statewide virtual happy hour. So you can just grab your favorite beverage and network with people from the industry and make some connections and maybe learn a little something from each other. Make sure you hit the Sales Enablement Excellence Special Interest Group. You'll need to go and register for that if you're a member. I think that is well, I'm not going to say that because I don't know, but make sure you go out and you register for that. There's a lot of great information sharing between people who are in that industry and people like myself who are just getting involved in that. And well, that's all I have. We are up against the hour. I want to respect everybody's time, so I am going to go ahead and sign off the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining our ATD Austin webinars. Check our calendar at tdaustin.org and you'll see all the other upcoming webinars that we have and other events that you can register for. Appreciate everyone's time. Thanks.